Proceedings of Finance Committee. Please be seated. Before we took the break, we were about to consider appropriation PAH 1, advice and support to the Minister of Planning, Lands, Agriculture, Housing and Infrastructure for $2,094,561 found on page 126 of the annual plan and estimates, which has been replaced by the handout given, or the pages, the replacement pages as just provided by the clerk from the minister and his team. Are there any questions with respect to PAH 1? Mr. McLean?
Mr. Chairman, can I go back to the NRA statement that the minister made?
Yes, sir, you may.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I believe the minister, and I didn't catch it, I do apologize, said that there was some 80% of some duty that is being given to NRA. Am I correct? Some fee, not due to fee, I think it was.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't quote 80%. If, and I'm not sure exactly what the member is talking about, but it might be where I said the government chose to use the import duties on fuel that is paid by road users as it affords the approximate amount of $10 million per annum. This amount will allow the NRA to remain fully engaged in maintenance activities for the entire fiscal year.
I thought there was a percentage of it that was expressed of something.
When I opened, I said the National Roads Authority currently has 84 employees, 100% of which are Caymanian.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I haven't heard the minister read that. It appeared like it was coming across as if government had made these efforts to try to separate NRA, and this was a big deal to try and get this. Why I say that, Mr. Chairman, is I'm wondering if that is not based on the National Roads Authority law, 2006 revision, which requires government to do that.
Mr. McLean, I got the impression when he read the statement that he was just doing that for the purpose of information so that everyone might be aware. You would obviously have some knowledge given your past years as minister responsibility for the NRA, but I got the impression the minister was doing that for the benefit of all in the chamber as opposed to trying to say anything new.
No, I understand that, but it appears like there was a separate initiative from the law. And I'm trying to clarify a couple things which will come as soon as that is answered. If this was an initiative separate from the law, that government is required to do that. Because in the past, it was passed on, but it went through general revenue first.
I think Minister Tibbetts will answer, but in the meantime, I think he was just making the point that you would not find anything in this AP&E with respect to the NRA, but here is some information that you would find on page 533 of the ownership agreement.
Mm-hmm.
But, Mr. Chair, I'm going to ask one of the acting chief officers in the Ministry of Finance, Mr. Ronnie Dunn, who is very familiar with the process, if he would just give a basic overview as to the change that has occurred in the way that the process will occur from here on in.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Dunn, please state your full name and address. Full name and title for me. Thank you. For the record.
Ronnie Dunn, Acting Chief Officer, Ministry of Finance and Economic Development.
Thank you.
Through Mr. Chair, to the member. I'm familiar with what you're referring to, Mr. McLean. The section that you're referring to within the roads law speaks to a fund and various apportionment of gasoline and diesel duties, infrastructure be appropriated as per management and finance. Paid
Just want to make sure that can you just expand a little bit when you say self-sufficient?
Self-sufficient in the sense of maintenance, not, it was never intended for new developments, new development of roads,
Right.
and the likes, but for the maintenance and the proper maintenance, because the law also requires that they are responsible
Right.
for the safety of motorists and what have you and whatnot.
Right, and that's exactly as I read, and through you, Mr. Chair, that is exactly the purpose of the whole exercise, to be able to allow them to be funded for the entire year, for them to be able to achieve those outputs that you just mentioned with regards to maintenance and safety. Even into last year, there was some difficulty. Year before, more so, but this budget year also, there was some difficulty with them being able to function for the full year to perform the task. And if I might just say, the new board and its chairman have, and as a policy, the government has agreed with their outlook. They are looking at 3-year plans with regards to all of the maintenance, by way of examining and knowing what priorities are and going about it in a systematic fashion so that the best bang for the buck can be achieved. With regards to what the member said, and he referred to trying to follow the law as best he could while he was there, I quite understand exactly what he was saying. And there have always been difficulties in going about it in the fashion that is originally prescribed. And what we're going to be looking at once we get past this stage is to be looking at any necessary amendments which will make life easier in the future in order to be able to go about having them be self-sustaining and self-sufficient, as the member asked, in order to ensure that we don't get into a problem where roads are in disarray and maintenance is nowhere near up to where it should be, the level of maintenance.
So will the $10 million do that?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, that begs the question then. Why are we, and Mr. Chairman, this just snowballs, eh? Our executive assets are doing $5,020,752 this year, but
That is over and above the maintenance of $10 million, which is in the ownership agreement of 500 and page 533 of the ownership agreement. That's more to do with capital works.
well, maybe it needs to be, and the narrative on it needs to be a little bit better because it's a miscellaneous road surface upgrades. And that is maintenance.
Yeah. Truth is, and that's, I know how, you know well how the documents are. But, and that was, I was going to get to that, but I saw when you were doing it, I know what happens, the domino effect, one question leads to another.
Yes.
Most of that funding is to do with the Georgetown Revitalization Program. It will involve, for instance, Smith Road has been a problem for a long period of time. And that will involve widening sidewalks and that, but it may well also involve, once we can get all of the prioritization done, it may well involve new road, for instance, from Elgin to Smith, or which the minister, the former minister will know, has been in the works for quite some time.
Yeah, which we did. Yeah. Which we tried. We planned this.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And also there is looking from Elgin to Eastern Avenue. But what we haven't had yet are exact costings of all of this. And then once we know exact costings, we're going to prioritize, utilize what's in the budget for the 14-15 year, and then do our best to keep budgeting as we go along. And this is all tying in with, while we speak to the Georgetown Revitalization, which is a policy the government has adopted and intend to get going, it also will tie in with the airport expansion, which is being planned, and also the cruise berthing facility. So it's a big mix, and this is the part to do with the infrastructure needs that not only are here now, but will arise from those projects.
Mr. Chairman, I know you want to fuel tax because the law prevents you from taking it out of the CUC one. You know that?
Yes.
Right. From that tax, we are hoping that NRA will be sufficient on maintenance, and government is going to inject equity executive assets through executive assets for development of roads. That's what I got from what, and which is fine. If government wants it, then they have to pay for it because it's an authority, right? So then, may I ask, the roads that I asked to be built in East 10, like the farm roads, Because I do know.
We have a full list of all of them, and we will, and in order as the board has suggested with priority, we then, as a government, will look at those priorities and try to see how best we can deal with all that have been asked for and to share it around, but we certainly do not intend not to have discussion with the members from all of the districts.
Well,
That will occur.
I'm still waiting for that 1 year later, but nevertheless, can you tell me if the Great Beach Road that I had requested to open up for farmers is in this budget for EAs under EA?
I can't answer you that yet because I have not had a list that has been agreed on by the board and sent back to me, but I certainly will be able to deal with that by the time we get to the NRA.
But Mr.
What I'm
Chairman,
saying to you is that we will, when we do all of the other stuff, I have NRA because it's in the ownership agreement. We're going to go. I intended to go through the NRA just like we're doing all the rest of the stuff. So it wasn't that you're not going to have an opportunity.
or you
Yes, I wasn't in.
under where though?
As I said, page 533 of the ownership agreement has the NRA in it. And while it's new and it's not in the AP&E, before we left my subjects.
All right, we'll do it under the EAs then.
Exactly.
Executive assets.
Exactly.
Okay, that's fine. I'll concede that one for right now.
Thank you, Mr.
It's not
McLean.
about conceding, it's about when we get to do it, that's all.
Okay, I'll
That's
wait.
all.
Thank you.
With bated breath.
Thank you. Mr. Bush, you had a question, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, by way of process here, or procedure, are we discussing roads, the entire budget now, or this is
No.
based? Because I have at least one question that I want.
What I would prefer, Mr. Chair, and Mr. McLean seems to be in agreement with that now. You have started at PAH1. I'd like to continue till we get through all of those. Then I'll go to this ownership agreement, page 533, and field the questions, including the one that the leader of the opposition says that he has
Yeah,
regarding
well,
roads.
you have been answering question all over.
No, I understand it. Just that's how it led, but that was not the
So
intention.
you don't want to continue down there right now then?
Just like to get through all the rest of it. By that time, because I'm hoping that there's some, I'll be able to clarify some issues which I know members will have questions on, which aren't, the information is not fully available yet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Okay, moving on to PAH1. Advice and support to the Minister of Planning, Lands, Agriculture, Housing and Infrastructure, $2,094,561 on page 126. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chairman, just to quickly say to members also, they will notice that the 13-14 forecast is $2.32 million, and the 14-15 budget amount is 2.1, which is just over $200,000 less. Just for members to know that there are some cost savings in the PAH1, because first of all, the voluntary separation package, which was offered through the Deputy Governor's office, was taken up by the senior strategic advisor, which means that that salary is no longer for this year in the ministry. And there is also some reallocation of resources to VLT 9 to more accurately reflect the cost of the outputs. And that can be found under PAH 16 when we get to PAH 16. So I'm only telling members the rationale behind $220,000 less in this year's budget under PAH1.
Thank you, Mr. Tibbetts. Mr. McLean, you had a question, sir?
Yes, if we were going on there, but if he's asking questions, then if you're going on PAH1.
Yeah, we are on PAH1.
Okay, okay. Mr. Chairman, this, the related broad outcomes talks about the agriculture sector suited to the needs and resources of the country. Now, I can't find another place in here where it talks about agriculture other than here, and there is some stuff I would like to bring to the minister's attention. If I can do that on agriculture from here.
So this is wrong. Mr. Chair, there's PAH 5 and PAH 6. I don't know if any one of those, when we get to them, would be more specific for the member.
Yeah, but this was on about advice to you.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead.
If it relates to advice to the minister, then this would be the appropriate.
Yes,
sir.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the minister has said since getting elected that he had set up a committee to look at the separation of the division of the government property in East End that was formerly used for the prison to farm. And we had the unfortunate incident of somebody there some time ago. And I know the minister spoke of it recently in his debate on the throne speech. But there wasn't a time frame set on it. He went to great lengths to explain that how difficult it will be to get electricity and roads and the likes and what have you. But there hasn't been a time frame put on it. Can he give us a time frame on that?
Mr. Chair, I would very much love to do that, but paper is going to cabinet now to agree on the individuals who will be serving on the committee. They will be tasked immediately with identifying the various steps. And in the meantime, we are asking the Lands and Survey Department to go ahead with the fixed boundary survey of the various properties, because we don't need to wait on that. But it is truly difficult for me to give a time frame, except at this point in time to say that the government as a policy wishes to achieve this, and with the resources that we have available to us, we're going to do it as expeditiously as possible. But there are some real-time factors which I don't have full control over, which makes it a bit difficult for me to say exactly how long it's going to take. I want to say this, that I would very much like to be able to get it to the point where people have started to utilize the property long before this term is over. But it's just impossible for me to say with real conviction that I have a fixed timeline in my mind as to when that will be achieved. It's just difficult.
Mr. Chairman, Having said that, and heard what the minister has had to say, let me
So you take off.
respectfully ask him to accept this letter on behalf of the people of East End and this list of people who have put their names up. I think it's some 36 or thereabouts. Keeping in mind, Mr. Chairman, that I have their names, the post office box, address, telephone number, email, acreage, and type of farming for information purposes for the minister.
As per our discussion.
As per our discussion. Keeping in mind that there are varying amounts that is being requested, and that committee will have to determine what it will be given leasing to the individuals. I don't know where the sergeant is, but I would like to get him to pass this
Once he arrives into the chamber,
to
I'll
the-
ask him to take
to
it
the
from you.
minister.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I don't know if the, thank you, to Mr. Minister Tibbetts. I appreciate the difficulty the minister's going through and probably of trying to determine and not knowing the extent of the works to be done on this piece of property. Because maybe he has never visited the property. I don't know, and that's nothing wrong with
Mr.
that.
McLean, is there a question, sir?
Yes, there is. Does anyone on his committee know?
The paper is going to cabinet. The committee is not fully decided on yet, just letting you know.
Mr. Chairman, all I'm saying is that the difficulty that he's expressing may not necessarily be a real thing, because this land has been cleared, roads were put through it, electricity was put through it to a great extent.
Mr. Chair, if I might just interject, the Agriculture Department has already been tasked with going through the entire property for us to get, and this is being done now, for us to get to the point where we know the type and lay of the land and what purpose best suited for, if that was where the member was going. So it is not about how difficult it is. I have not walked the entire property. I have walked some of the property, but not the entire property. But the difficulty that I speak to is not just how difficult something is. That's not really what I'm saying. It's the magnitude of what has to be done, and it simply is going to take some time. So I'm not trying to make it sound as if this is an impossible task. All I'm saying is that the various steps that have to be gone through and thought through. It's not just a matter of saying somebody here, you can use this piece of land. You can use so many acres of it. It's various things, because once somebody has access to that, they're going to want access to water and all kinds of different things, and you want to try to make it as user-friendly for them as possible, while the government can only do so much. But at least if we can get some of the basic infrastructure done, once the surveying is all complete, then we'll know exactly what's what, because lots of people are interested in a property or in a section of the property to do farming in, but there are also other uses besides produce farming, which some of the property can be used for, which some of the farming sector can use, and we need to make sure that we'll utilize as much of the entire property as we can.
Thank you.
Just so that the member will know.
Thank you. Mr. Bush, you had a question, sir?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, on page 126, in the number of parliamentary answers, they have 3 to 7 And I want to find out how the ministry determines that.
Mr. Tibbetts?
Mr. Chair, I think that this is simply going on historical information. If you look at 1314, it has 1 to 3. So, I mean, it's nothing new. I think it's just going on
And
history.
you'll have room to wiggle if need be.
Sorry?
So you'll have room to wiggle if need be.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Mr. Bush?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. Through you. The minister has inherited a ministry that has a history of some questionable things that the public has questioned. Things like when you have the chief surveyor's post and the registrar's post being held by the same person, when this should be considered a conflict, seeing that they're both statutory boards and so forth, or positions. That has been separated last year. It was a hot topic in here.
Mr. Bush,
And the question,
are you sure you want to ask that question at this stage, or you mentioned chief surveyor, which relates to land information?
No, I'm getting to the section now. That's just some of the things that's going on in this ministry, and I've been made aware that there are 3 positions that are held by, or definitely 2 that are held by non-Caymanians, and people on the outside who are qualified have said that they're interested. So my thing is, posts like the admin officer, senior policy officer, people have been acting in those posts. There's posts like the CFO post that people have said that qualified, and they're wondering when these will be advertised, how will it be advertised locally, overseas, etc. What are the policies and how will these be handled?
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Mr. Tibbetts?
Mr. Chair, as well you know, and I'm sure the member also knows, these personnel matters I would have to defer to the chief officer, and I certainly am happy to do that. I'm sure he's capable of answering it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jones, for the record, could you please state your full name and title?
Yes, sir. Good morning, everybody. Alan Jones, Chief Officer, Ministry of Planning, Lands, Agriculture, Housing and Infrastructure.
Thank you.
If I could just seek some clarity through you, Mr. Chairman, in terms of the specific question that the member's asking. There was a lot of talk, but sorry, I didn't mean that disrespectfully, but a lot of background. But if there was a specific question about a specific post, I'd be glad to ask.
Mr. Bush, would you repeat the specific question?
Yeah, but there's 2 in particular. Make me get rid of my West Bay accent. There are top posts in this ministry. One is definitely being acted on by someone from overseas. And another post that was brought to our attention is the Chief Financial Officer's post that are held by non-Caymanians. Caymanians who are qualified are inquiring what is being done to Caymanize these posts, when will it be advertised, and how will it be advertised that they will stand a chance to apply or qualify.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Mr. Jones?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. The senior policy officer that Mr. Bush refers to in our ministry is actually called Admin Officer 1. The post that the member is referring to is actually not at present a substantive post. We have somebody from another department who has been fulfilling the duties of that function for a period of time and being paid a duty allowance. We recently got approval from the Deputy Governor / moratorium within Portfolio of Civil Service to create a substantive Senior Policy Officer post. Again, I would stress at the moment it's called Admin Officer 1. It is the proposal in due course to change the name 2 senior policy officers to bring it more in line with the nomenclature in other departments. We have recently advertised the post. The applications have been submitted. The Chief Human Resource Officer has prepared or is in the process of preparing a scoring matrix in an effort to produce a shortlist, and interviews for that post will be held shortly. In relation to the Chief Financial Officer post, approximately 1 year ago, it was decided by the Deputy Governor that in an effort to better deal with the Ministry's account reporting, that there should be a shuffle and a reallocation of senior financial officers at ministry level. In short, the Ministry of Plahi, as it now is, would receive a new Chief Financial Officer, and the Chief Financial Officer existing at that time would be transferred to another entity. As it happens, that other entity was the portfolio of the Civil Service, and I was informed that a new Chief Financial Officer, the present one that I have, would be allocated to the Ministry. That officer is a non-Caymanian, has been with government for some years, was previously the CFO with the Ministry of Health. The contract for that particular post was recently renewed for a 2-year period upon the instructions of the Deputy Governor, and a condition of that instruction was that the post would not, on this occasion only, would not be advertised. Whilst I know a little of the background to this, I would say that it is really for the Deputy Governor to speak to, since it was his responsibility and his authority in relation to the placing of this particular individual.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Bush, Mr. McLean, did you have a question, sir?
Mr. Chairman, I will give way to Mr. Bush for right now.
Okay, Mr. Bush.
So, let me get it clear. Keep in mind, I'm a rookie, sir. I have questions, you know. I've learned from the best. So it will be, so it all comes under the hiring of your financial officers, and your people all come under the remit of the Deputy Governor. Through you, Mr. Chair, sorry.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman. Well, strictly speaking, of course, all hiring comes under the responsibility of the Deputy Governor. He does delegate some responsibility to the chief officers in that regard, but ultimately the Deputy Governor has the final say-so in all of these matters. You will appreciate, sir, that particularly with the more senior posts, the Chief Financial Officer, the Deputy COs, the COs, etc., the Deputy Governor will take a far more intense look at it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. McLean?
Mr. Chairman, does that mean that we should leave all these personnel matters to the Deputy Governor's arrival?
Mr. McLean, I'm not certain as to when the Deputy Governor will arrive, and I don't see his designate in the chamber, so I don't know if you want to take that risk, but...
Well, Mr. Chairman, why I say that is he has to come here to defend his budget. If you would prefer, we could leave it then, but he could be inundated.
But that's entirely up to him, sir. But if you want to reserve your questions with respect to personal matters until he arrives, that's entirely up to you. But I wouldn't want to defer the vote on PAH 1.
No, Mr. Chairman, no. I'm trying to determine with all the ministries, because I believe the deputy governor is going to be.
But I do think that perhaps some of the ministers or some of the ministries, you may not have all of those same types of questions for the deputy governor. So let us proceed as we are able to, and then when the deputy governor comes,
Okay.
perhaps I will also, once we take a break, I'll try to determine when he might be arriving in the chamber or at the LA.
Yeah, because
If he is, I know he was off for a few days.
I can feel the bumps on top of him.
Okay. If there are no further, you have a question?
No, we're not
Okay.
leaving yet.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, sorry, Mr. Miller. I would just reiterate what I said earlier, that whilst the Deputy Governor does have ultimate responsibility for all posts, chief officers are delegated certain responsibilities, and I would be happy to try and field any questions that any of the members have on personal matters that relate to my ministry. If there are matters that where decisions were taken above me, then I will say so and point that out to members.
Fair enough. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. McLean?
I thank Mr. Jones for that, very much for that too. Mr. Chairman, the minister came here and made a statement about NRA. I wonder if he's going to give us a statement about ICTA and the former managing director. Because this is the first time we met since the last finance committee in October.
Forgive me. Are you asking to deal with that now or when we get to ICTA?
Well, it's personnel matters, and it's advice from your chief officer, and based on what he explained to you during the last finance committee, wherein he advised you therein that you said, I am advised by the chief officer that there is no direct role by way of like with other staff over which he has control. But then you went on, Mr. Minister, to say that, Mr. Chairman, let me just say this, that looking at it from any angle that we wish to look at, certainly there is an unfortunate unfolding, and while I understand the desire for the best way for me to put it is swift and decisive action with whatever. The fact is that we have to determine what the facts are with what obtained during that process. There is no way of avoiding that. And then when that is discovered, or as soon as that can happen, which hopefully by tomorrow I will be able to, I certainly will report back to this committee as to what is what.
Okay. So, Mr. Chair, I am happy to deal with that specific matter now if that's what, if the member thinks that that's because he's saying that this is to do with policy advice, which is fine. Can I hear exactly what the question is, or is it that the member is simply asking for me to report as to what went on, as I said I would?
That's correct.
Okay.
There was a disciplinary process to go through, as we understood it, and the minister would respond back.
That's fine.
Back here.
That's fine. I'm happy to do that now. Through you, Mr. Chairman, as the member is quoting from the Hansards with what I said then, the board of the ICTA conducted an investigation in which when that was completed, they made a report. Because the post is a post that is a cabinet appointment, the report and its recommendations were taken to Cabinet swiftly as we could get it, and the Cabinet looked at the report. We also had the advantage of taking legal advice on the matter, and the contract for the individual was going to expire in February of this year. And along with the recommendations and the legal advice, because the legal advice was such that the way the contract was written, that the actions which Cabinet were inclined to take and the manner in which Cabinet was inclined to take the action could well have attracted some legal action from the individual, which may well have not only caused for a longer period of time before resolution was had, but also, while both parties would be risking it, could have involved some costs. So having taken that advice, the Cabinet decided to terminate the contract immediately, but because it was only I think it was close to 3 months left on the contract when the decision was made, and based on the legal advice, we simply decided to pay out the contract until its expiry date so that there was no loss of revenue to the individual by way of the contract, which would give him no argument or anything that he might have thought was an argument from a legal standpoint. And we decided that, given the fact that that was not a very expensive proposition compared to what legal costs may have been, and based on that legal advice, we terminated the contract and paid the individual out through to the end of the contract. And that's what we did.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, the minister is saying the Cabinet terminated the contract and still paid him? Is that how contracts work?
Based on the legal advice. Well, the Cabinet didn't pay him, but the Cabinet gave instructions. It's a Cabinet appointment.
That's why I asked you, because you're the only one can answer on that.
But I'm saying to you, it is a Cabinet appointment.
Absolutely.
So Cabinet agreed to terminate the contract under the conditions that I just explained.
Okay. Can you, Mr. Chairman, can the minister tell us why Cabinet took the decision to terminate the contract of this individual?
It was based on the facts of the case and based on all of the circumstances surrounding and based on the legal advice that we had. And I'm not trying to hide anything from the member. But the member will appreciate that there are, after a certain distance, it's a little bit difficult to be very specific.
Yeah, but Mr. Chairman, I hear the minister about the difficulties after a certain distance. The people's money, transparency, openness, the people needs to know, because there had to be a reason why this gentleman was terminated. Now, he perjured himself right here. And if that's the reason why he was terminated, then that is gross misconduct, and the people must know. Now, that's what I want to know. Why what conditions, what did he do to be able to terminate his contract?
Mr. Tibbetts?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, were I in the member's seat over there, I would be inclined to be asking the same question. So I don't consider the questions to be unfair questions. But I also know that the member is also aware that there are certain situations which, while I understand very well that it is the people's money, no one has to remind me at any time, even when I'm sleeping. I'm very aware of all of that. And I try my best to, with whatever custodianship that I have, to make sure that is judiciously taken care of. When it comes to certain matters involving individuals, it's just not quite as easy to open a whole room of I don't want to say acrimony, but let me say this, and let me try to be as open as I can. It was determined that at some point in time there was bad judgment exercised by way of a possible contract and advertising for a post with because it needed a work permit, and the immigration department instructed that certain advertisements that had been done were outdated and had to be redone. And unfortunately, when those ads were redone, the hiring was done in a manner which ran counter to the dates when people could apply. So I use the term bad judgment because just as the member says that people have a right to know, I also have to be very careful that I don't expose myself or the government to any possible legal action. And I can go that far to say that that warranted, in our view, that the contract was going to be terminated rather than wait until it was ended 3 months later. That coupled with the legal advice caused us to come to the decision that we did come to. And Mr. Chair, let me say openly that given all the legal advice and given the circumstances, I am of the view that that was the best way for us to handle it. And the only other way to handle it was to have done it without paying out the contract, and we ran the risk, even if at the end of the day we were not at fault for not paying out the contract, of it actually costing the government more because of legal hassling back and forth. And it was only 3 months of salary, and it could have ended up costing 4 or 5 times more before the day was over. And that was a judgment call that we made.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Tibbetts.
Oh, it's now over yet.
Mr.
If
Chairman?
you want to go,
Okay.
it's now over.
Mr. Bush.
Just an observation, Mr. Chairman, though. Under this parliamentary process, there is no risk, and I'm sure the member understands that, there is no risk of any legal fallout from any information you're giving us as to actions of cabinet. There is complete none for you, nor for the government.
But forgive me, but that is why I spoke about the immigration issue, and that's why I said that, because that was
I
really
thought you
the
said
crux
you were
of it.
fearful of some risk of...
But as I kept thinking it through, that's why I started saying what I said. So that is why I disclosed that. That was really the crux of the matter. It was a signed contract, but the contract was only signed by one party, by the party to be hired. I mean,
But
here's what happened.
But
Here
sure,
is
sure,
what
no,
happened.
Mr. I understand that the minister has been, I think, at pains to maneuver his way around the whole situation. But whether the contracting person signed it or not, there was all that intention, and nobody got a contract just so. They happened to get it because there was a certain process.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Here's what happened, as I understand it, and as the facts that were brought to us. When the original advertisement went out, and I want staff to listen and correct me where my memory may not be perfect, because I want to make sure that I'm saying it as it is. There was no Caymanian who applied for the post originally. And then it was advertised overseas, and expressions of interest were shown from overseas individuals for the post. When the managing director at the time looked through those who had applied, he thought that a certain person was the best applicant. He wanted to fill the post fairly swiftly at that time, because several months had gone by from the beginning of the process. So he sent the person a contract for the person to sign, knowing full well that he would have to get a work permit for the person. The contract was sent back to him. He then applied for the work permit, was told that to comply with the requirements for the work permit to be granted, that he had to have these 2 advertisements in the newspaper. So he did that, but when the time for the newspaper ads, whatever the time was for the cut-off time for people to apply for this post by way of the advertisements in the newspaper, this other person was hired, was it 1 or 2 days after that deadline? Yeah. As I said, the contract was signed before the second advertisements. The second advertisement went out. The second set of advertisements went out, and the managing director at the time, really was only putting these ads out to satisfy the requirements of the work permit application. In the meantime, he was in the beginning process of hiring this person because he wanted to get the work permit. So the person signed the contract before the second ad went out. And I don't know what went on in his mind, because I did not discuss it with him. But I don't know how he couldn't see the flaw in going through the hiring process while advertising the post. And in essence, that is where the whole situation went wrong. So, from our perspective, regardless of whether the intentions were all the best intentions or not, the whole process was handled wrong, and that was not something that we as a cabinet could say, that's okay, let's just put that one behind us. And hence, the actions we took. And that is exactly what happened,
Thank you, Mr.
to the
Tibbetts.
knowledge that I have.
Mr. Bush.
Mr. Chairman, the minister said that he was stepping carefully because of what could happen legally wise. The leader of the opposition said we have nothing to worry about. I think, I don't know, maybe it should be clarified what happens if civil servants come here before this house and don't give us the correct or the true answers. And if clarified to me personally, is there any chance of me asking a question I get in trouble for? Legally.
See, just if you don't mind, Mr. Chair, just to say, that and this is something that perhaps we need advice on, because public servants and civil servants, two different things, and I'm not so sure they rule under the same rules. But I also want to take this opportunity, please, Mr. Chair, that while we talk about sour things, all of that has ended up that we now have a very capable Caymanian who is now head of the ICTA, and I'm quite sure that all of us here and the whole country will be proud at the end of the day of the job that he will do.
Thank you, Mr. Tibbetts. Mr. Bush, just for your own clarification, I don't think there's any question you cannot ask. It's a matter of whether or not it's appropriate to answer the question. But we would not discuss things that are currently before the courts or that may appear in the courts, just for that clarification. And are there any further questions with respect? And one more clarification, just to elaborate on what Mr. Tibbetts said. There is a distinction between civil servants and public servants. The civil servants are governed by the Public Service and Management Law, and the public servants or public officers are governed under the labor law. So just for that distinction. But
So if they are, Mr. Chairman, so if they are found to be lying to us when we question them,
that could be in contempt of Parliament.
thank you. I just want to get that clear.
Mr. McLean, your question, sir.
We getting there. That'll be the question for the Attorney General when he sits over there. And the DPP. Because it ain't over, Mr. Chairman, not by a long shot. Mr. Chairman, the minister said that they terminated the contract based on what transpired with the engagement of an individual outside the process, the established processes of government. Now, there are very few civil servants whose engagement and termination is spelled out in law. This one is. Mr. Chairman, for the avoidance of doubt, let me read. Public officer. Oh, public officer. Section 7 of the Information Communication Technology Authority Law. 1. The Governor and Cabinet shall terminate the appointment of any director who resigns his office, becomes of unsound mind or incapable of carrying out his duties, is declared bankrupt, suspends payment to or compounds with his creditors, is convicted in the islands or in any other jurisdiction of any offense involving dishonesty, fraud, or any indictable offense. E, is guilty of serious misconduct in relation to his duties. Is absent without leave of the chairman for 3 consecutive meetings of the board. fails to disclose a conflict of interest in accordance with this law, and we get into that one in short order, or in the governor in cabinet's reasonable opinion fails to discharge his duties competently under this law or the electronic transactions law 2003 revision, without prejudice to the provisions of subsection 1, the governor and cabinet, acting in his discretion, may terminate the appointment of any director, whether the director was appointed before or on or after the date of commencement of the Information and Communication Technology Authority Amendment Law 2009. Now, I want to know which one then he was terminated that we had pay him.
Mr. Chairman, through you, this section does not refer to the managing director. This is referring to board appointments.
Yes,
Section 7.
but the director as well. Yeah.
Mr.
If you look again, you will see.
Before we proceed any further, I just want to read from the Legislative Assembly Immunities, Powers and Privileges Law 1999 revision, and with respect to immunity from legal proceedings. And it says, no civil or criminal proceedings may be instituted against any member for words spoken before or written in a report to the Assembly of which he is a member, or to a committee thereof, or by reason of any matter or thing brought by him therein by petition, bill, resolution, motion, or otherwise, nor shall any such proceedings be instituted against any person in respect of such words broadcast or rebroadcast by any broadcasting station licensed under the Broadcasting Law 1997 revision, or wholly owned by the government of the islands. Mr. Tibbetts, it appears that you are allowed to speak freely with respect to the matter, and then we can proceed much faster than we are, sir.
Okay.
Well, what else you got?
But I was only saying to the member from East End that the section that he read, which was section 7 of the ICTA 2011 revision law, refers to the appointment of directors, that is the board. It doesn't refer to managing director. The managing director is under section 6.
Mr. McLean, sorry.
Mr. Chairman, if the minister would read down, it would show that he is subject to the same disciplinary actions as a director appointed by cabinet.
Where
7. It says the manager that he shall be, by virtue of his office, be deemed to be a director appointed under section 5.
Say that again?
He shall be
Where is that?
a director appointed under 5.
Which section, which subsection are you reading?
Subsection 2 of 6. Subsection 1 of 6. Mr. Chairman, whilst the minister looks at that, may I ask him to tell us then if there were any other considerations that was required by prior to determination, release, or whatever of this individual?
I think that's perhaps where, and if I gave the wrong impression, it was not my intention. After the cabinet decision, I will read the letter which was sent by hand to the former managing director, Mr. David Archibald. And it begins non-renewal of contract. I'm instructed by Cabinet to write to you in relation to your current employment as managing director of the ICTA. You'd be aware that pursuant to a contract of employment dated 21st of June 2002, your appointment as managing director of the ICTA commenced on the 6th of August 2002 and was for a period of 36 months, the fixed term contract. Notwithstanding your continued employment as managing director upon the expiration of the fixed term contract, and I pause just to say that that appointment was from the 6th of August for 3 months, so that means August of 2005, upon the expiration of the fixed term contracts, which would have been August 2005, our records do not show that formal contracts of employment were executed for your re-engagement. In the absence of a written contract stating the terms and conditions of your employment, Cabinet has proceeded on the basis that the terms and conditions of the fixed term contract continue to apply, which such modifications as may be appropriate in the circumstances. This is to advise that in the exercise of powers under Clause 16 of the fixed term contract, the Governor and Cabinet has determined that it does not wish to offer further employment to you under a new contract of employment. The decision takes effect immediately, and you would be paid 3 months' salary in lieu of notice of the said decision. So, officially, there was only the one contract.
Mr. Chairman, would the member lay that letter on the table?
I don't have a problem with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, when we were being told all along that he planned to retire in February, seems like everybody was of the opinion there was a contract. So from 2005 August, there was none until on examination, it was discovered that that was the case. And after looking at the whole situation, that what I just read is exactly how the whole thing was decided to be dealt with based on all the advice. Mr. Chairman, the member can ask whatever other questions he wishes to ask. That letter shows how the whole process was handled after the Cabinet decision and what was done. The member can speculate whether, given the situation, if he would have handled it differently. That may well be the case, but that is what, with the legal advice we had, that is what we determined to be the best end result,
Mr. Chairman.
given the whole situation, and allow us to move on so that we could go through the process of hiring someone else.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Tibbetts. Mr. Bush?
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, the minister keeps referring to legal advice that he got.
This was in Cabinet.
Yeah, not written.
Not written.
Verbal.
Verbal. This was in Cabinet.
But there's,
As happens all the time.
well, that's what he's there in cabinet for.
That's right.
But obviously there's a cabinet note on it.
Can look at that if you wish. I don't know.
Well,
Meaning, I can't sit here and recall exactly.
no, and so there is a cabinet note that was taken to cabinet in regards to the matter. A note or a paper,
Oh,
whichever.
the paper which was taken to Cabinet, absolutely.
Well, whichever.
Wasn't a note, it was a paper.
So that decision came about because of that paper.
Yes.
And the advice was given in cabinet based on what the paper said.
Right.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Bush, do you have?
If I know what you're trying to determine, I don't have a problem answering it because it wasn't. But I'm not so sure what. Are you already?
Well, firstly, I wanted to find out whether it was written legal advice you
advice,
had,
no,
and
no.
you clarified that
Yeah. And it was a cabinet paper that was brought.
in
with
regards to the matter.
Yes, exactly.
And I would ask for the cabinet paper, but I'm reluctant to do that. I don't know, but I see Premier frowning. Maybe he's frowning at you, but not me.
Mr. McLean?
Mr. Chairman, can I ask the minister? Can I ask the minister then, would it be safe to say that Mr. David Archibald was not terminated because of any actions in here?
Any actions were in here?
Or of any questions asked of him and his response thereto, and the information that came to light in here?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, but let's hear what the cabinet paper said. Can you read excerpts on what they asked cabinet to do if we get to the bottom of it? Because it seems like you can be here all month on this particular item. Excerpts can be,
Gentlemen.
excerpts
Gentlemen.
sorry? Mr. Chairman, I can't sit here and answer the member's question. I would have to go back and look to see exactly what the paper trail is, because, I mean, I remember all that went on, but I can't remember what line was taken from a legal standpoint with regards to ending the situation and being able to move on.
Thank you, Mr. Tibbetts.
Mr. Chairman, I know we ain't gonna get this, we ain't gonna advance this much further on that front, but I am sure the minister would know whether or not there were any other considerations in this Mr. David Archibald's favor for his termination.
In his favor,
Yes.
forgive me, but I'm not sure I understand.
Did he get anything else other
No.
than 3 months?
No,
So we didn't pay him for the KY domain then?
no,
Or you work your way out of that one?
yes. And I didn't get myself into that one either.
No, neither did I.
I know that. I wasn't suggesting you.
Mr. McLean,
Wasn't suggesting
you started this line of questioning on the term of policy advice, but you have strayed into some of the various other outputs that we would otherwise move on to discuss at a later stage.
Which one is that, sir?
There is one there for the management of the KY internet domain.
But Mr. Chairman, that was part of this termination negotiation. See, the minister, was it?
Wasn't that a negotiation? Mr. McLean, there were certain things with regards to that we were fearful of. But when we checked the whole thing out, we were able to not have to engage in any discussion about it because we were able to deal with it, to make sure. But there was that fear, and as well you remember from a long time ago.
Yes, and his answer to me, Mr. Chairman, that day in here was, when I asked him who owned the KY domain, he said the people of the Cayman Islands. And we know it was a company that he had.
Originally.
We know that. Don't go there.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. If there are no further questions, sorry, Mr. Bush.
Under advice and support to the Minister of Planning Lands, would it be better for me to save my question for lands and survey under PH 9?
Yes, sir. If it
Thank you
relates to
very
the
much.
management of the Lands and Survey Department.
Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. If there are no further questions on this appropriation, then all those in favor of
I know not.
all those in favor of PAH1, advice and support to the Minister of Planning, Lands, Agriculture, Housing and Infrastructure for $2,094,561 standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye. Aye. Those against, no. Thank you. I'll quickly say that we will be working until 1 p.m. before we take our lunch break. We will resume at 2 p.m. So anyone wanting to make plans, you have lunch from 1 until 2. And then when we return this afternoon, we will be working from 2 p.m. until approximately 6:30, 7 o'clock p.m. this evening.
Mr. Chairman, you better tell him close that kitchen door because the food is very strong in here.
Just so you can plan your affairs for today. My apologies for not saying so earlier.
Mr. Chairman, just as you move on, just to quickly say that the memo which I read, legal also vetted that. Just to quickly say that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Was that the one that I'm asking to? Thank you.
Okay. PAH 2, Emergency Response Services, $266,269 found on page 127 of the annual plan and estimates. Are there any questions? Mr. McLean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I recently had a visit to the Civic Center with the little young fella, Worms, and we took a
Contract was issued on Friday. Seriously.
Why is it that they always do it after I open my mouth? Why? Why on it does this? It is left for me to follow up, no one else. Mr. Chairman, well, anyway, I wasn't talking about that specifically. I got to deal with that minister out there with that one. But I was talking about the generator, I think, tell little fella there. There was, like the fuel, the tank fuel for the generator was rusted and stuff. And then the storage tank that is there at the site for fuel, I think it should take 2 or 3 different types of fuel in it, diesel, gasoline, and I don't know if it takes kerosene or propane, but the condition of those was starting to rust. And I'm wondering if anyone has paid any attention to that. Because I haven't been back there since. No, I've been, but I haven't looked at them.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the head of facilities management has just advised me that yes, they have looked at it, but what the member is asking about right now is in the works, but it is not something that is very pressing, so it might take a couple of weeks to get to that because there are some other pressing matters that they're dealing with, but they will deal with that. It's just that on examination, it wasn't determined to be something that was very critical and had to be dealt with immediately. So they expect within a few weeks that it'll be dealt with. It's on a list of stuff as they keep checking off with what they have to do.
Mr. Chairman, may I now ask how often that generator is started under load? At the civic centers, both.
I am understanding that it is the DVES who deal with that. Tell me what the point is. Yeah. Mr. Chairman, through you, these generators are set on a timer, and as I understand it, they are set, members are not quite sure of exactly what day of the week, but it is on the weekend. And they believe that they're set for a once a week, comes on for half an hour, runs on its own, and then it automatically shuts off.
Mr. Chairman, he hasn't answered my question.
Whether it's under load,
Yeah.
I'm told it is, when it's set on the timer. That's what I'm told.
So what load do we have at those civic centers?
Now, when you say load,
Regularly.
you mean if people are there?
No, Mr. Chairman. For the generator to be under load, it has to engage the grid. It has to come off the grid, take the facility off the grid that is utilizing electricity on the grid at the time, and air conditioner on, lights on, and stuff. So who is there during the day? Why is the air conditioner on in the halls during the day?
Mr. Tibbetts, in the interest of time,
Yeah, I would have to take advice on that, Mr. Chair, because I don't know exactly the answer to that.
yeah, I think what the
And there's
members,
also another unit involved in this whole process also.
right, I think what the members
But I can get the information for the member, certainly.
Chairman?
Mr. Bush.
Mr. Chairman, can the ministers say whether they, in regard to the maintenance and inspection assignments, they're dropping from 375 to between 320 and 360? Why is that happening in this particular year? $127. Page.
Mr. Chairman, through you, this is simply some fine tuning. It's the realignment of some outputs under PAH 11 So some of this, some of the things that were in PAH2 for 13-14 are now moved to PAH 11, and hence you will see a few differences. Which is to do with DVES and procurement and maintenance of government fleet. Mr. Chairman, let me say it once more. For the 2013-14 AP&E document, this, where you have like the numbers 375, some of those numbers have now shifted in the 14-15 portion to under PAH 11 because that's where it should be and should not have been in PAH and PAH 2 from the very beginning. So it's just a realignment.
You're talking PAH 11, you're talking, I'm specifically going to find out for the maintenance and inspection. I mean, that is, that was trying to standby generators.
Mr. Bush, is your microphone on?
Mr. Chairman, I just
Yeah.
want to have a little discussion
Yeah, I know.
offhand with him so I can.
Forgive me, I was listening. You're saying, I know you're talking about the number of maintenance and inspection assignments required for 22 standby generators, and that's how it said it. But some of the duties of DVES, in other words, have gone over to PAH 11, and it includes some of the work which is done to those generators. So if the question is whether there is less attention being paid, that's not the case.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I was trying to ascertain whether there was a reduction.
No, absolutely
Not
not.
to do with the generators.
Right, exactly.
That's all I'm trying to
Yeah.
find out.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, Mr. McLean?
Mr. Chairman, is the minister saying that PAH 11 has generator maintenance under it? Is that what he's saying?
That's more or less, but that's procurement and maintenance of government fleet.
What are we saying?
My question, I'm satisfied with my question. It's not a reduction in the.
Well, you may be satisfied, but Mr. Chairman, what we're going to wind up with is what we did during Hurricane Ivan, when I had to roll up my sleeve and go and repair a generator. Because we don't maintain the generators. It's a waste of our money. It's a waste of the government funds. If the generator comes on once a week and just runs there, it doesn't go under load. When the time comes for it to go under load, a hurricane, we're not going to have the generator. I mean, you're not going to just change oil in the generator and the radiator on the generator gets all deteriorated. It is a waste of government's money. Stop trying to fool people that want to maintain them.
Mr. Simmons, I was trying to say earlier, I think what the member is trying to ascertain is whether or not it is done under load. And in the interest of time, is it possible that perhaps someone...
I hear you loud, but this thing is a joint effort between DVES and Public Works. And I think the question Mr. Bush asked, that the Public Works Director can just quickly and succinctly give an overview of how it's done, what's done, responsibilities that PWD has, and the responsibility that DVES has, and that should clear the matter up, hopefully.
Thank you. Mr. Jones, just state your full name and title for the record, please. Thank you.
Max Jones, Director, Public Works Department.
The generators are maintained jointly between DVS and Public Works Department. DVS maintain the mechanical side of the generators, and Public Works maintain the electrical side, and it's normally handled by a joint visit by one DVS person and one Public Works person. I don't recall the exact timing, but it's something like that off-season they're maintained once every couple of months, and during the season I think it's once every 4 weeks. The maintenance, yeah. Some of the generators are not on automatic timer transfer, some of the older generators. Those ones I can confirm are tested under load. It's a good question on the other ones. I believe when the generators come on, because it's automatic, it would just be whatever load the generator is experiencing at that time.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Mr. Jones,
Just 1 second, please. And to Mr. Bush's question, the reason why some of this realignment was taking place was simply because both Public Works and DVES do some of the maintenance, one electrical and one the mechanical. That's why some of it was being realigned.
But that's what you explained earlier.
Right.
I understood
Just
that.
want to make sure.
Yes, I quite understand what you're saying.
Mr. McLean?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, to you to Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones has been around this emergency thing for quite some time. He and many others. How is it that they're maintaining these generators and ensuring, since yours do the electrical end, the generator, and DVS do the mechanical end, there are two separate entities altogether, and they have to be maintained differently to ensure robustness of that generator. Do they go there and put them on the load? What kind of load do they put them on? Especially, well, you wouldn't know that, the mechanical end with the radiator. And I'm only doing this, Mr. Chairman, to try to avoid the country losing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars on generators that are not maintained, because I know the one in East End is not maintained properly. And it may be because of the time between maintaining it. I look in on the one at Gun Bay, it is horrendous. So be careful with on the last answer.
Well, as I say, the two entities visit the generators together. They have a standard checklist that they carry out. And what I would suggest we probably do, through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. McLean, next time the crews are going up there, we will advise you and certainly welcome any input there. But the crews are visiting and filling in standard checklists on those generators.
I don't even have one in my yard. I stopped maintaining generators. That's on the job now. I ain't going. But I know it needs to be done, Mr. Jones. That is what I'm concerned about. This country has a hurricane, we're going to have problems.
Mr. McLean, I think he has said what they do, and he has invited you for the next time that they're going. I think in all earnest, you should probably accept that invitation, so that, no sir, you don't have to get into it. You can stand and observe and give instructions at a time.
Mr. Chairman, in the interest of the people of East End, when they're going again, tell them to call me, and we will go there and put load on that generator.
Thank you. Perfect. If we may move on now, are there any more questions with respect?
Just to confirm that the visits that he is talking about is to the full government complement of generators in the various districts for the various shelters. Just to confirm that.
Yes, this includes all the shelters and the other generators in buildings considered that would be very necessary in an emergency, police stations, those kinds of things. There's a series of generators.
That's what I'm saying, the full complement. Thank you.
Mr. Jones, for the record, I too would like to be invited when you do the Georgetown locations.
We
so
will,
I can
sir.
accompany you. Thank you very much. If there are no further questions, then all those in favor of PAH2, Emergency Response Services, $266,269, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. PAH3, National Mail Service, $1,438,439, found on page 128 of the annual plan and estimates. Are there any questions? Mr. McLean, do you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I would just... Yeah, I just saw her over there. Yeah, you need come. Mr. Chairman, I just want to know how far Ms. Glasgow has gotten with her courier service. It was quite a thing for me when I was there, and I'm just interested in knowing if she has gotten it developed where she can compete now with all those that got the big logos all over the place.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, everyone. Sheena Glasgow, Postmaster General, Ministry of Planning, Lands, Agriculture, and Infrastructure. Housing and infrastructure. Still, through you, Mr. Chairman, it's still in the works. We're progressing slowly. As I recalled when we were here last in Finance Committee around October last year, I advised that we had just started a new system with the Customs Department to assess duty, and that was an important step. We've continued to work out the kinks in that, and it's gone a little bit on the back shelf because of some other internal work that we've had to do for the Universal Postal Union in terms of a measurement system for the delivery of mail, and we've had to really focus on that system. It's called the Global Monitoring System, and given our limited resources, we've taken some time to focus on that. At the same time, continuing to iron out the kinks with Customs. At this point, I can at least report that the issues with Customs are pretty much in hand and under control. And we have also done some revision to internal processes in terms of generating the invoices and stuff like that. And I then need to confirm the final steps with ministry in terms of then taking it out on the road and making it happen, so that I hope that in a very short period of time I'll be able to positively respond and advise Finance Committee and the member that we're out on the road making those deliveries, sir.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, can the Postmaster General tell me what the aims and objectives for entering this item of business?
Mr. Chairman, it is exactly that, sir. For the National Postal Service, any National Postal Service, the areas of growth in the industry are very small. And in the parcel delivery area, that is one of the identified and proven areas of growth, because it stems more from the increase in internet ordering, online ordering, so that more merchandise is coming into countries from other countries, as opposed to increase in letter mail. Letter mail is not where the increase is at, sir.
You know that.
And that's the bottom line.
Mr. Chairman, did we conduct some, well, let's even not say a study, but did we try to find out whether the private sector is not fulfilling the role for the country? or this is an attempt, well, to make money, which means competition?
Mr. Chairman, sir, no formal study has been done for the Cayman Islands. This is an industry-wide trend that has been noted for several years. I could not say that the private sector is not fulfilling its role in this area. What I can say is that given the International Postal Network, what has been studied and documented over various years is that the National Postal Service is able to deliver these parcels at a cheaper cost than what you would pay through the private sector. And it comes back to the Cayman Islands Postal Service trying to take advantage of an area where there is a possibility of increasing the revenue for the Cayman Islands government, sir.
So basically, and the business case of the whole program or project, you're expecting to beat the rates of the private sector?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that is it exactly. And the trend we have seen over the past few years does show that the Postal Service is handling more parcels, more EMS items. Now, EMS, we already have a specified delivery area. Basically, it's Georgetown and West Bay Road, and they'll go into West Bay as well to deliver. They also deliver on Cayman Brac, and that seems to cover the majority of the volume of our EMS items. And the growth that we've seen there, we expect similar growth with parcels when we get there. And there's also one other thing I might add.
So you're doing Cayman Brac, Mr. Chairman. You're doing Cayman Brac now?
Yes, sir.
Before you're done West Bay?
West Bay is being done, Mr. Chairman. West Bay is being done.
Oh, okay.
One of the things that I would add, Mr. Chairman, is that to the best of my knowledge, not many of the local courier companies actually deliver on the sister islands. There is a limited delivery service. It might go through like Cayman Airways Jiffy service, and then they have to go to the airport and collect it. But to say that they have an established office or an agent on the road delivering as the Postal Service is, I'm not aware that that's happening, sir. So that's a facility for the sister islands we would extend.
So, but in regards to the sister islands, you were expecting that you're going to make sufficient revenue, the business case, the business model is going to be so that you can actually make money on this. And if that is so, that includes new staffing, or this is being done currently with the staff complement that you have?
Mr. Chairman, given the restrictions under which government is operating both on Grand Cayman and for Cayman Brac, it is our intention to work within present staff limits until we can make a business case to show that we are going to make enough revenue to offset hiring another officer dedicated to that sort of service. There is a dedicated driver on Cayman Brac, and there is a dedicated driver on Grand Cayman for our EMS product, which we expect at this point they will take on parcel delivery as well. So we're going to make our current resources work, sir.
Are there any further questions with respect to this appropriation? Mr. McLean? Oh, sorry, Mr. McLean, my apologies. Mr. Connolly had indicated earlier. My apologies. Mr. Connolly?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It occurs to me, looking at this, that we are basically losing $1.4 million a year to run the Postal Service. Is that accurate to the Postmaster General?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
So the next question on that is whether or not we've looked at this as a candidate for privatization because it doesn't. I don't think that as a government entity, we should be competing with private sector. We should be facilitating private sector to create roles and opportunities for our Caymanians. And when government starts competing with private sector, especially in a laissez-faire economy, then we have some issues. I just wanted to ask what we saw the role of the government postal service to the manager.
I was wondering when C4C was going to jump in here. Since you have that long suit for taking everything out of the government, I'm surprised you don't know what they asked Ernst & Young to do, though. You did? They never discuss it with you? They never told you?
Mr. Chairman, the member asking the question is part and parcel of the rationalization committee, and I guess as the minister, I will wait to see what the report says and what it suggests for us to be able to make any determination with regards to the specific question.
Thank you, Mr. Tibbetts. Mr. Connell.
Mr. Chairman, I just, what I was asking was whether or not, as part of that exercise, because I haven't seen the full report, is whether or not planning as a ministry put the post office forward as one of its suggested areas of privatization.
What?
And also,
Okay, forgive me, I didn't understand the question like that. I can tell you no, we didn't.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that was going towards my next, the last question I asked, which I have not gotten answered, was what is the role of the postal services as seen by the Ministry of Planning?
So you got to...
Outside of the obvious, Mr. Chair, and I really not being funny,
Mr. Connell.
but I'm not so sure that I understand when you say what's the role. I mean, we all know what they do and the services they provide. And I don't know whether I just want to make sure that I'm latching on to the right thing here. I know with the question that was asked previously about the postal service going into competition with private sector, that may have led to this, and if that's the case, then is that where we're coming from?
That's exactly where I'm coming
Okay,
from.
well, if that's where we're coming from, it is simply that if we look to see that the total cost of providing the output that we speak to now is $4.7 million roughly, and they have revenue of 3.3. So it costs $1.4 million more, costs the government $1.4 million more than the revenue earned to run the entire postal service. So as of now, we would be looking to increase revenue without adding any more cost, which is what the Postmaster General explained, that there would be no more staff involved in the exercise, and it was simply a matter of trying to increase revenue. So that is really the thought behind all of this. To say to the member now that I'm with where his mind is at, there are some services, especially when we look at the smaller districts, and also we look at Cayman Brac and Little Cayman to provide the service. My guess is that private enterprise would not engage because it certainly would not be profitable unless they were able to charge much more than what is being charged now, and that's certainly a policy decision for the government. So it is not quite straightforward that you must look to in other words, that if it's not making a profit, then it needs to be privatized. There are other factors to be considered. There may be portions of it that it might make sense to look at. I don't know, might very well be the case, but to say that the entire postal service now, it's a bit difficult because, as I explained, there are some parts of it which, as a government, we are responsible to provide the service, but it would almost be impossible for it to be profitable.
Thank you, Mr. Tibbetts. Mr. McLean, did you have a question, sir?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make a comment on behalf of the mail service and Ms. Glasgow. I appreciate that in today's age there is the buzzword of competition and all that kind of stuff, but every country has a mail system, and it's to the most importantly, like the minister said, to those who never get or never have the monies to provide the expensive courier systems to their children and the like. That's what a government-owned postal system provides for any country. America is losing its head left, right, and center on it, but they want to shut it down. And I know when I was there, I pushed Miss Glasgow. I don't know. Sometimes I thought I was pushing her flat her face to get at this express mail, but that's why, so we could cross-subsidize and see if we could break even. And this 1.5 million, when I was there, was much worse than that. And I even went built post office, try to help it in Bodden Town. And it will work, it comes, but I just wanted to say that this is absolutely necessary. My objective was, there are people who have their kids overseas who are sacrificing to get a little letter across to them. They can't pick up the phone and do it. They sit down, do handwriting that, and they send it out to the mail. And I want the world to know that I support the service. We just got to do stuff to, like extend express mail into East End and that they have done in West Bay, and those are the things, and time it will come. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr.
Chairman,
McLean.
just one last question. Have the Postal Service, have you determined that, I thought you said earlier, and if you didn't, whether that's going to add significantly, what your projections are, going to add significantly to the bottom line as to what we're losing now? Are you going to decrease the loss, in other words, through this proposed service?
Mr. Chair, just to give my response, because there will be no more real additional costs involved, it is anticipated that this will help the bottom line. Proof of the pudding is going to be seen in after operating it for some time. They'll be able to have a better feel for exactly how much, but it's a little bit hard to anticipate. And I think once the Postmaster General gets through ministry with the policy issues that are being finalized now, then it should be a matter of months before they have a better picture as to exactly. But it's a bit difficult right now to give any estimates as to how much difference it's going to make. I'm sure by the time we come back to Finance Committee, God's willing, next year, we'll be able to answer that question a lot
So
better.
at present, Mr. Chairman, at present then there is no comparison as to what the business model is as far as adding to the government bottom line and reducing the costs for this particular item of business that we're proposing. Mind you, Mr. Chairman, on my observation is that more and more people are not using, because in this age of technology, all sorts of things is happening. I mean, people that you didn't expect would really get into computers are now doing so, and do so through cell phones, in daily contact with children at school, for instance. Daily, well, minute by minute. And a package, well, differently, yeah, but at the end of the day, will it add to the bottom line? That's and not really increase it.
Ms. Glasgow?
Mr. Chairman, I'm advised by my Deputy for Operations that where we currently stand when we launch now, the projections are for an additional about 75,000. That's where we're at now. What we envisage is that we would then grow the market as well. Once it's established and we get our customers ordering more things through us and the volumes grow, that amount can grow. I can say, Mr. Chairman, that in the past, I had been approached by a couple of external companies who were selling products online, that they wanted to engage in a partnership with the Cayman Islands Postal Service to do just this. And at that time, we were not able to take advantage of the opportunity because we didn't have things in place on our end. So it could very well be that once we have this up and running, I may have another business case from other companies who wish to do that. In addition, the Universal Postal Union is pushing its own system to help increase the parcel business on an international level, and more postal national postal services are signing up for that. So therein again is another business opportunity to increase parcel volumes, ergo increase revenues.
Mr. Chairman, I don't want to prolong this, but one of my concerns would be that, there are all sorts of little small companies that's springing up that do these sort of mail orders, if you want to call it that. And by government getting into the business, it could damage their prospects. That's one. But the other point is that companies like UPS, DHL, Sprint, and those global companies are not, when government puts its foot forward, they're not going to sit back and say, well, I'm drawing out. They are going to, because they've been established so long, they are going to put their best foot forward. Then,
If it brings prices down, it's wonderful.
yeah, but that it doesn't. Getting to that point is also a cost to government. Anyway, Mr. Chairman, I think I've ventilated my end of the issue enough. Thank you kindly.
Thank you, Mr.
Sorry, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. If there are no further questions on this particular appropriation, we will now proceed to the vote. All those in favor of PAH3, National Mail Service for $1,438,439, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. We will now take the lunch break and we will return at 2 p.m. sharp. Before we go, I would please ask all members and visitors to refrain from stepping into the bay area here on the floor. The well, unfortunately, it is it's out of bounds to everyone. I didn't write the rules. My sincere apologies, but those are the rules of Parliament. So if you have to ask 100 people to excuse you as you go along, by all means do that, but don't step on the well. Visitors,
Mr. Chairman, that is visitors, not members.
Visitors and members lead by example. Thank you.